In a way, our culture is like the great jewelry store where the thieves broke in and they didn't take anything out of the store, they just changed the prices. Well, awareness teaches us to look at the price tags and to know when the wrong things are priced too high or too low by our culture. Sometimes I think it's helpful just to sit in your house and just think. Awareness will take you beyond the things you see around you. It'll cause you to think about what gives your life most meaning, and you think about love and trust and caring, and about your relationships, your friends, your children, your spouse. You think about the things you spend your time on. Are you on track with the things that are most important, or are you absorbed and irritated or unhappy about the wrong things?
Well, hello again, everybody. It is such a pleasure to welcome you into another episode of This is Heartbeat, the podcast, featuring insights and teaching put together over the 50 years of work done by Landon Saunders. Today, we go back into the mid-1980s and pick up a recording that Landon created for Friends of Heartbeat, focused on the difference between paying attention and being aware. Once again, here's Landon Saunders.
If you could be reincarnated as an animal, what animal would you choose to come back as? Maybe man's best friend, or as a cat, or maybe a horse like Secretariat, or a lion. One guy thought about wanting to come back as a giraffe, but then he went to the zoo, and he watched them for a while. They have to do the splits just to get a wisp of grass. And have you ever seen them run? But none of that's as bad as what happens to them when they're born. The very first thing a giraffe does as it's born is to fall 6 feet from its mother's womb and land on its head. Now, I know a lot of folks who begin every Monday morning like a newborn giraffe. They fall 6 feet from the womb of the weekend and land on their head. And they never quite realize why it is they hate Monday so much. I wouldn't want to come back as a giraffe. Now, William Faulkner had a different answer to the question. He said, if I were reincarnated, I'd want to come back as a buzzard. Nothing hates him or envies him or wants him or needs him, and he's never bothered or in danger, and he can eat anything. Faulkner's answer said something about the way he was experiencing his life. As a Nobel Prize winner, he knew something about the downside of fame, of being in demand. He was a major writer. He was the center of attention. But he found that finally getting to be the center of attention is not what it's cracked up to be. At that point, just being a buzzard sounded pretty good to him. Now, what are we usually seeking when we yearn to be the center of attention? Sometimes, of course, it's just ego satisfaction. But I think there's something more. Aren't we seeking some piece of the action? Doesn't being the center of attention mean that you're noticed, that you're important, and that you're somehow involved in life, that you're in the middle of things? But does it mean that? Many people who get attention really have very little sense of themselves, and they're often miserable when they're alone. In fact, that's why some try to be the center of attention. They're trying to get away from their emptiness, their misery. In the husband-wife relationship, sometimes each competes for the center only because neither one of them is very happy. And a child. A child sometimes creates chaos because, chaos is better than not being noticed, even if it brings punishment. But isn't there a better way to deal with our need for affirmation? Let's pose a different word to work with. Not attention, but awareness. Now, trying to get attention can be an awful way to live, but seeking to become aware, that's loaded with possibilities. You see, people who simply want attention can chatter endlessly sometimes, but say nothing that anyone's interested in hearing. They're not aware. Others can be endlessly busy, but none of what they do nourishes them. They're not an aware person. Do you know what one of the greatest mistakes a person can make is? It's to believe you're really living when actually you've just fallen asleep in a chair in life's waiting room. Awareness means waking up. Do you ever feel your life is locked into endless routine, that you just go through the same motions every day? Henry Fabre, the great French entomologist, was famous for his study of insects. He'd spend hours just watching them. One day he noticed how a species of caterpillars called processionary caterpillars play follow the leader. They endlessly follow the one in front of them. And he wondered if they were trapped in this instinct to follow blindly, or if there was anywhere in them at least just a speck of broader awareness. Well, to find out, he coaxed a procession of caterpillars up onto the lip of a large vase, and they began to go around and around, and he wondered, now, will they just keep doing that, or will they be able at some point to break out of the circuit? Will they make up their mind, maybe just to swerve a little bit to this side or to that? Well, he went on thinking about it, and he said to himself as he anticipated what they might do, he said, now, what I think they'll do is they'll go on turning for some time, for an hour or 2 hours perhaps, and then I think they'll make their descent somewhere or other, because the food they love's only inches away. But no. Fauber watches the little caterpillars through 7 days. They go around and around until finally they just can't go around anymore, and so they stall and they die, following the leader, blindly going through the motions. A look to the left, a look to the right. Yes, just inches away there was food and freedom, but the processionary caterpillar was without awareness. We need awareness in our lives, because that's the thing that will give us the orientation we need. Awareness will give you direction. Awareness will give you energy to move in that new direction. Without it, we're prone to make the same mistakes over and over, circling past the same landmarks. So first of all, awareness causes us to think about the nature of our lives, to see if there's any mindlessness that's going on. Now, let's suppose we've seen that in ourselves, and that we're determined to do something about it. We're going to blaze some new trails. Well, this is the second place awareness is so critical. Without awareness at this point, even your new path can be a trap. Without awareness, you're apt to confuse your finger that points you to a new direction with the direction itself. That's all some people do. They run around in new directions. They're really enamored with the technique. The only thing is, they just don't know what their mission is, even with a new direction. They're a little bit like the man who wanted to find the ocean, and he was told that if he would follow the footprints in the sand, he would find the ocean. Well, he began his journey. He looked not to the right or to the left, not up at the horizon, just down at the footprints. And he finally became totally involved in just looking at the footprints. Well, one day the footprints disappeared, and there was water around his ankles. And the man was very distressed. He had run out of footprints, so what does he do? He just turns around, began retracing his steps. Sometimes we pride ourselves on being an exciting person. We're just willing to try anything. Our only problem is we never find what we're really looking for. We don't have awareness. This is the big problem usually with our possessions or our money. One person said his only problem with either was he just never had enough. Once there was a rich merchant who searched the world over to find great paintings, pearls, and carpets. His pursuits had made him very wealthy, and he did everything he could to find more ways to make even greater wealth from his efforts. But one day he heard about a very wise man and was told that no matter what his pursuit in life was, that this man could help. The merchant went to the man to get his help in creating more wealth. When he went into the room with the wise man, and before he could even speak, the old sage told him to go to a particular mountain beside a particular river and to stay there for 3 days, and that if he would see something he had never seen before, and then to come back. Well, the man rushed to the mountain by the river, and he sat and he waited and dreamed all the time about paintings and pearls and carpets, and he expected a magic door to open up and to find himself in a hidden treasure room. He saw nothing except his fantasies, though. He didn't see the majestic river or the great mountain. He didn't hear the churning of the water or the singing of the birds, and after 3 days he left with great disappointment. He went to the wise man and demanded to know what went wrong. The wise man laughed and said, "Your idea of riches?" And then he continued, "Now don't go to the mountain or the river again, because you'll never find them. But all around on the bank of the river were diamonds. Those were not stones, they were diamonds. But you missed them." And then the man remembered he had seen something. While he was thinking about his fantasies, he had seen the light pouring off the stones. But they didn't fit his own idea of riches, and so he paid them no notice. Now that's the difference between attention and awareness. The man was giving all his attention to his thoughts of paintings, pearls, and carpets, so much so that he couldn't see the acres of diamonds that were in front of him just for the picking up. What's your idea of riches? Do you have the blinders on? Are you possibly missing some of the richest parts of your life? Our culture gives us a concept of what's valuable, what's worthwhile, but I'll tell you, it's not to be trusted. In a way, our culture is like the great jewelry store where the thieves broke in and they didn't take anything out of the store, they just changed the prices. Well, awareness teaches us to look at the price tags and to know when the wrong things are priced too high or too low by our culture. Sometimes I think it's helpful just to sit in your house and just think. Awareness will take you beyond the things you see around you. It'll cause you to think about what gives your life most meaning, and you think about love and trust and caring, and about your relationships, your friends, your children, your spouse. You think about the things you spend your time on. Are you on track with the things that are most important, or are you absorbed and irritated or unhappy about the wrong things? Thoreau said, "The cost of a thing is the amount of what I call life which is required to pay for it, immediately or in the long run." You see, awareness is having a sense of all of life, all of your life, of the full spectrum, and this lets you know what's really worthwhile. If one just pays attention to the one running just ahead of you in the rat race, and you fail to gain a broader awareness, then I think you wind up spiritually going the way of the processionary caterpillar. You go nowhere. Have you noticed that, and this is often the case, people who don't know where they're going, people who don't understand which things have the greatest value, always seem in a big hurry? They don't know where they're going, they don't know what they're doing, but they're always in a big hurry to get on with it. Their approach is, charge. Consider the rhinos of the field. I did once. He was in his natural habitat, roaming free on the savannas of Kenya, and I was in a Toyota. I wanted a close-up, and I didn't have a telephoto lens. So inching the Toyota closer and closer to that beast, at first I felt like John Wayne, and then suddenly the word Toyota started going through my mind with an increasing emphasis on the toy. Well, I looked at that rhino, so fierce-looking, and all I could think of was toy. And so I quickly snapped and backed away at high speed. And then when I showed the slide to my friends, I had to explain that the little gray spot in the center of the picture was a rhino. Oh, what a feeling. Toyota. Eugene Ionesco wrote a play called Rhinoceros. In the play, everyone in the village is being transformed into a rhinoceros. Ionesco's saying that we've all become rhinos, frightening creatures that everyone's afraid to get close to. And even if people think they're getting close, we often appear just as a gray spot in the middle of the picture. Rhinos have thick skin and poor eyesight, and a lot of people have gone this route. They've chosen armor over awareness, and it's a costly and lonely way to go. We become experts not only at keeping our backsides and our bets covered, but at keeping our hearts and our minds covered. Yes, we're experts. Now, someone said that an expert's a drip under pressure. Well, we all feel the pressure in the workplace, in our homes. But the alternative to being a drip under pressure is to develop what Hemingway described in that beautiful phrase, grace under pressure. We go out every day into a world of rhinos, and it's dangerous. And that's why it calls for such terrific awareness. You see, you have to bring to life the awareness of the matador. Maybe Hemingway was thinking about the bullfighter as the essence of grace under pressure when he wrote, "Bullfighting is an exceedingly dangerous occupation. It's a good deal like grand opera, for the really great matadors accept that they run the chance of being killed every time they can't hit high C." You've seen those signs that say, "Beware of dog." Now, it'd be silly to put a sign up in the matador's locker room that said, "Beware of bull," although I do know a few people who could use such a reminder. But if instead the sign said, "Be aware of bull," then it would capture the essence of what a matador must do. Don't teach your children to beware of people. Teach them to be aware of people. Being aware of people is how you hit high C. It's how you learn to operate under pressure without being a rhino or a drip. Awareness leads to a grace under pressure that lets you neither cast your pearls before rhinos or say to them, "Make my day." Awareness says there's a choice. There's a choice besides running over people and being run over. Awareness lets you find a way where others have failed.
Be aware of the bull. Well, we hope you've enjoyed today's episode of Heartbeat, the podcast, featuring thoughts from Landon Saunders. And, of course, if you'd like to find out more about Landon's materials and his work, you're invited to visit the website, thisisheartbeat.com. That's thisisheartbeat.com. Please plan to be with us next time for another episode of content pulled from the 50 years of work done by Landon Saunders on This Is Heartbeat, the podcast.